Hey guys, this is Matt Wenning at winningstrength.com, and today I want to talk about training for your first competition. Now I know for a lot of you guys that lift weights, sometimes you feel that you might want to compete. But before we get into that, let's like, subscribe, and then comment on some questions that you might have on your first competition and how we can help you here at winningstrength.com. So a little background on me. I first started powerlifting around 1991 and I did my first competition around 1992 or 93. Now, during that time, I was just very young. I was 13 years old, and I was very lucky to be around some great lifters. One of the which was Tim Smith, who was a 500-pound bencher raw at 181 body weight. I was really lucky to grow up with someone that close to where I grew up and was training and had at least a decent amount of information on how to get super strong. So I find that if you're trying to do your first competition, make sure you look around your area and see if you can find someone that has some experience and some education on how to train and how to get smarter. That's step one. Now, if you're having trouble finding someone in your local area, the good thing about the internet in some ways is that you can find online coaching. We do online coaching here at winningstrength.com. We have a lot of beginners on online coaching that have help or need help from advanced people like myself, Wade Russell, or John Branham, which are both very skilled coaches around the country. So this is a huge proponent to making sure that you're doing the right workouts at the right time, because as a beginner, you can create a lot of bad habits that will show up on not only on the platform, but in future training as well, limiting your ability to get better. So I find that having a coach, whether it be in person, like we talked about in step one, you might need to find an online coach if you're rural or if you're in an area where powerlifting is just not very big. Okay, now back to what we were originally going to talk about. We're going to talk about how do you train when you compete. And the thing of it is, when you're going into competition, there's a couple of big things that I see people especially make insanely wrong in the beginning phases, especially if they don't have a coach. This is where conjugate training can be a little bit misused, and oftentimes in the beginning, massively misused. So in the beginning, we want to train how we compete. We don't want to train high on the squat. We don't want to train touch and go bench presses. And we don't want to train deadlifts where we get to the top and drop them. This also seems maybe like how normal people are training in the gym, but as a powerlifter, you're going to have to follow set rules. So what I find is that set everything up like you're competing when you're training. Hit depth on squats, whatever that depth may be. It could be as severe as the USAPL. It could be a little bit more lax like the USPA, or if you're in an equipped division, it could be just parallel. Those are all different preferences. And in reality, I think probably one of the best organizations to be in for technique and not laxity, but at least a little bit of flexibility is the USPA has always seemed to do really well with a lot of lifters. There's some other organizations that are really good now that are not right on the top of my head. But if you're thinking about competing, the USPA holds a lot of different meets around the country, and they tend to have very fair judging. I wouldn't say it's insanely strict, and I wouldn't say it's insanely loose, but it usually is pretty good textbook compared to what most people think is good lifting. So the point is that you want to look at videos from a USPA or whatever federation you're training and look at the technique and try to emulate some of their better lifters as far as depth and positioning. Now, all this is going to be different and change depending on how you're built. If you're really tall or you have long femurs, your squat may not look like Matt Wenning's or Ed Cohen's or someone else's. You might have a little bit more lean over. You might be a little bit more upright and use a little bit more knee. That can come later. But in the beginning, what you want to do is get as perfect as you can with your technique, because that will follow you through the rest of the years of your career. The next thing about training for your first competition is get your friends to judge you. This gets you comfortable with 3 people watching, 2 from the side, 1 from the front, just like a meet. I also find that in the beginning, if you're doing your first powerlifting meet, sometimes it's beneficial to go to other gyms and train where the same visual cues are not there. Oftentimes when you go to meets, the ceilings will be higher or lower. The front amount of room, you might be facing a wall or way out 30 to 50 feet, maybe 100 feet in a gym. It's important to go to different facilities so that way you're not comfortable only in your facility. You find this even at the advanced level, guys are super strong, can do big things in their own gym, and they get outside of their own atmosphere, and the next thing you know, they only have a portion of their strength that they had trained for. I've seen this happen many, many times. And a lot of times at winningstrength.com, we'll get people show up at the gym that are prepping for contests just because they want a different environment and a little bit of a feedback. So if you're a beginner and you want a place to come and get some coaching and feedback without necessarily being on online coaching, then come visit the gym and train with us, and we can put you in a competition setting to where you can be a little bit more comfortable outside of your normal environment. This is huge for beginners because, again, you can get really strong where you train, but being able to show that in a different place can sometimes be difficult mentally and physically. The last thing I want to go over in this video is train in the things that you're going to use at the competition. So whatever shoe you pick, obviously we're a flat sole shoe kind of atmosphere here, but if you decide that you want to run a different shoe, then make sure you're training in that shoe all of the time. If you're going to wear a belt or wrist wraps, get used to putting them on and off every training session. Now this may go against a lot of the coaching cues that I talk about in Conjugate, which is rotating beltless, box squats, pauses bench, no pauses bench. But in reality, in the beginning, if you're getting ready for a competition, you're going to need a lot of specific competitive reps. This also means that sets of 8 and 10 in the classic lifts like deadlift, squats, and bench press may not be conducive for your first competition, because what you need is a lot of singles. You need a lot of ones, and that means you need a lot of walkouts, you need a lot of setups, you need a lot of everything that comes along with doing 1 rep maxes in a contest. So if you're training and you're waiving your training in percentages where you're not hitting a 1 rep max every time you're in the gym, but you're doing a lot of singles and doubles and maybe triples, your amount of 1 RMs that you're doing is fairly consistent, and therefore you have a better likelihood of hitting a bigger number in a contest. If we do 3 sets of 10, for example, we only did 3 singles. But if we do 10 sets of 3, we did 10 singles. This can be hard to think about sometimes, but remember that a lot of times what you want to do is you're trying to be better at ones. So how many ones are you getting in a particular workout? So increase your sets and reduce your reps, and you'll find that the transfer on that to doing a powerlifting meet will be a lot better. So I hope this video has helped you out a little bit. If you have any more questions, hop on to winningstrength.com. Let's sit down, have an assessment, and let's see where you're at. We just had a beginner come in from Alabama at 15 years old, and there were a handful of little tiny errors that he was making, and he immediately, within a half an hour, felt way better in the squat, and another half an hour way better in the bench, and in another half an hour amazingly better in the deadlift, finding almost all of his weaknesses and fixing them before he started accumulating more training load. So we do this a lot at winningstrength.com, especially for beginners, and we hope to see you there as well. Talk to you guys soon.